Now, Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed that he'll end the war in Ukraine in a single day after taking office. His own envoy to Ukraine has now revised that to 100 days, and we still have no details on how that may be achieved. Moscow currently controls 18% of Ukraine and is continuing to take territory. You can see that in this map from the Institute for the Study of War. Our senior international correspondent, Ola Guerin, reports on the mood in Ukraine ahead of Trump's return to the White House.
Waging war on Ukraine's eastern front. A drone unit assembles improvised bombs by hand. Some parts 3D printed. We get a close-up view. They work by torchlight to avoid detection by the Russians just a few miles away. Then the drone is launched towards the enemy. It's called a vampire, bringing death by night. And here, the pilot, Commander Mikhailo, from the 68th Jaeger Brigade. He drops an anti-tank mine on an underground Russian position at the edge of the city of Pokrovsk. We see it explode just wide of the target. Mikhailo is not expecting much from President Trump, even less from President Putin. Do you think there's any way to do a deal with Putin?
Maybe, maybe not, but he seems like a completely unstable person, and that's putting it very gently.
For now, he's focused on trying to hold back the Russian advance. But after 3 years of war, some Ukrainian soldiers have put down their weapons, like Serhiy Nezdylov, who's now on trial. As many as 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers are accused of leaving the battle. What message do you want to send about the war?
We must continue to fight. We have no other choice. But soldiers are not slaves. Everyone who has spent 3 years or more on the front line deserves the right to rest.
It's a real sign of the times here now. You don't see men queuing down the road, waiting to enlist, as we saw in the early days of the war. You do see Ukrainians in the dock accused of desertion. And you also see funerals of those who died for Ukraine and the agony of those left behind. Anastasia Fedchenko is pregnant with her first baby, a girl. Her husband, Andriy Kuzmenko, was killed in action in the east. He fought so Ukraine would survive for their unborn child, Anastasia says. She doesn't believe in peace deals. This war will last as long as Russia does, she says. I truly fear our children will inherit it from us and will have to fight. The suffering and the sacrifice continue here. What's missing is the talk of victory. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Eastern Ukraine.
Now, 3 lawyers who defended the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny have been sentenced to up to 5.5 years in prison. They were convicted of being part of what was termed an extremist organisation at the end of a trial which took place behind closed doors. Navalny was Putin's highest-profile critic within Russian politics. He died suddenly in an Arctic prison last February. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, reports.
Walk into a courtroom and you wouldn't expect to see this. In the dock, 3 defense lawyers, Alexei Liptsa, Vadim Kobzev and Igor Sergunin. They had defended the late opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. Now they were on trial on extremism charges. Guilty, said the judge. The punishment, prison terms of up to 5.5 years for passing on messages from Mr. Navalny when he was in jail. Applause from their supporters, who dismiss this trial as politically motivated. The lawyers reply, "Thank you for being here." From their defense team, Andrei Orlov tells me it's an unprecedented outcome that will have consequences for legal defense in Russia. It's nearly 1 year since Alexei Navalny died in a remote penal colony. He was the Kremlin's fiercest critic. His family, his comrades, say he was murdered. The Russian authorities deny any involvement in his death, but continue to pressure his associates. Towards the end of this trial, one of the lawyers convicted today, Vadim Kobzev, addressed the judge and summed up in one sentence what has been happening here. "We are on trial," he said, "for passing on the thoughts of Alexei Navalny." But it's not just Mr. Navalny's lawyers who are being put in the dock. These journalists are on trial too. They've been accused of working with Mr. Navalny's outlawed anti-corruption foundation. And yet, in the town of Petushki, where the lawyers were in court, the only trials people seem interested in are their own trials and tribulations. "I'm more concerned that they've dug up the road and there's no running water," she says, "and that they still haven't cleared all the snow." The fact that just down the road, 3 lawyers have been convicted and sent to prison barely registers. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, in the town of Petushki.